Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Thank you. I am Saxbe and I'm an alcoholic. Hi. Caracas Lil. You're awful pretty, you people. Mighty pretty. And many of the people I love best in the world are right in front of me tonight. I reckon we're the most blessed people on the face of the earth. Because, you see, that's what makes our program tick. I don't believe that there's an alcoholic on the face of the earth that ever got sober and remained sober on intellectual knowledge or profundity or principles. I don't think anybody ever did. We're allowed to get sober by the spirit of Alcoholics Anonymous. We maintain sobriety by the practice of principles. But nobody ever gets sober on principles or profundities. Right here in this room tonight, we have the greatest congregation of profundities. We got the greatest bunch of philosophers on the face of the earth right here tonight. There's an alcoholic in this room that hasn't known exactly what was wrong with everybody he ever saw. And one of the things that endeared us to the non-alcoholic and alcoholic population in the world was we didn't mind telling them what was wrong with them. And that isn't a good way to win friends and influence people. We're a great bunch of philosophers. I was known as the drunken deacon for 10 years, and not without cause. Something has to happen to an alcoholic. And it isn't intellectual knowledge or profundities or principles. Something has to happen. For instance, why am I not drunk tonight? I'm a tongue-chewing, babbling idiot drunk. Why am I not drunk tonight? This is Thursday night. And there's a drunk in this room that doesn't know that Thursday night you start oiling the machinery. Friday night you get her in the high gear. Saturday you paint. Sunday you taper off so you can go to work Monday. Now that's in the beginning. The time comes when some Sunday you taper off, so you can go to work some Monday. So it's not normal for an alky to be stone cold sober on Thursday night. And there's only one reason that I am. I've got the thing I was looking for in the bottle. I've got the thing that I was looking for in the bottle. Now, what's the thing? I'm not fighting me or you or life or God or the devil. I'm at peace with me and with you and with my very own God. That's the only reason I'm not drunk. There is no other. If I felt right here like I felt 35 years ago, I'd be just as drunk tonight as I was 35 years ago. And I know it. There's no big deal. It's no big deal. I said I'm an alcoholic. What does that mean to me? It means that I cannot successfully drink liquor. And I can't successfully, on my own, keep from drinking liquor. That's my problem. So the only possibility for me to be sober is the one that is keeping me sober. There's nothing in a bottle or needle or pill or pot or acid that can do anything for me but tear me down. I've got the thing I was looking for all my life. My experience in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is a little bit different than most people who come. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't say I was different. I said my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous is different. Because I couldn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous until I had gone through the gates of insanity and death. Had I had to surrender consciously the first time, I would have died without coming to this program. There is no question in my mind about it, none whatsoever. Because I had never admitted defeat one time in 43 years of life, not once. Surrender was not in my vocabulary. For generations, I was taught that surrender was for the weak. The weak man surrenders, the strong man wins. And I never admitted defeat once in my life until January 1946. Now, it's a strange thing to me. I can look at my life, and I cannot believe my conduct. I had run out of good drinking time before Alcoholics Anonymous was born. On the 10th day of last month, Alcoholics Anonymous was 44 years old. I'd already run out of time before it was born. But I didn't know it. I drank another dozen years, trying to prove that I hadn't run out of time. And it took a dozen years to do it. And it's a strange thing, because I became a periodic. Mrs. C said 5 years, but it was at least 10. It might have been 12 years before I got to program. I became a periodic. Because, you see, I was going to win this battle, and you can't fight a very good battle when you're down on your back. You got to get well enough to get back in the ring for the next round if you're going to win. And I had to win. So I was physically as sober as I am right now between every two drunks for a dozen years. And I could look at my record between drunks with physically sober eyes. And right up until my last drunk, I could convince myself that I'd learned my lesson. This time it's going to be different. And of course it was. It was worse, just like it always been. Now, I had a pretty good record to look at. First place, I was not in high esteem with the gendarmes out my way. I have never up until now gotten to the point where I was comfortable in jail. You know something? I don't like it in jail. My family thought I must love it in jail because I spent so much time there. Now, mind you, I could look at that between drunks for 10 years and still convince myself that I learned my lesson. I had a hell of a lot of trouble with fleas. I've only run into 9 people in 33 years that had the trouble with fleas that I did. My bedroom would get 10 billion fleas in. And I'd lie there and try to get them off of me, you know, and they'd roll over my hands, and I'd wear myself out trying to get rid of those fleas. And then I'd just have to lie there and breathe fleas. Now, that ain't good living, really. In due course of time, the fleas turned into spiders, big as the top of this thing. They'd be coming down from the ceiling, you know. I'd see one of them coming, look away, because I knew he wasn't up there. You see, I knew it. And I wasn't going to look back, but pretty soon I'm looking again, and he's a little closer. And pretty soon I got him in focus, and I can't take my eyes off of him. Then he comes right on down. You know, and you can't get out from under him, because you can't get out from under nothing. That's hard on your nerves, I'll tell you something. There's a picture, not very expensive, a nice little picture it was, that on the wall right at the end of my bed. And I used to look over there once in a while, and you remember Jordan in the picture? Jordan was deaf. You remember when that guy was in representing death in moving pictures? Mr. Jordan. And I'd seen Mr. Jordan in that picture frame. And I knew damn well that Jordan wasn't in there because I'd had the picture for time. It was a pretty little picture, but there was Jordan. And pretty soon I'm fastened on him, and his old neck gets longer and longer and longer. And before long he's breathing right in my face. That don't do much for good living at all. Finally, it was elephants. I guess I'm one of the few, if not the only guy that lived in Beverly Hills that was ever charged by a herd of elephants. That almost never happens in Beverly Hills. And they damn near ran me out of the county. I'm telling you something. And after a little while, I was having a bit of trouble with music with no visible means of support. I'll never forget the first time I heard the music. I was in a withdrawal period, but maybe about 7 years before I got here. And I went to the kitchen after a glass of buttermilk. Tea kettle was sitting on the stove, and along with the steam coming out of that tea kettle came the most beautiful symphony you ever heard. Ah, it was beautiful. And I stepped back, I looked at that thing, and I said, this is the greatest phenomenon of modern times. This old tea kettle suddenly become a receiving set. And then I made a slight error. I went out and herded the family in to hear the music. They couldn't hear nothing. You know what I thought? I thought they were nuts. It was just as plain. I lived to hear a dozen bands at once. All of them with a different announcer. All of them playing different tunes. Some awful good music, I heard. But there were no knobs. You couldn't turn it off. And it came out of peculiar places. It'd come out of the shower, out of the lights, out of the toilet. Just couldn't turn it off. A little later, I was meeting the people and talking to them, and they were talking to me. And they weren't around. I suspect this was the toughest thing that my family had to put up with. Because quite often we'd all be in the same living room, and I'd have company, and they wouldn't have any. I can believe that that would be very disconcerting for Ormsies. And then I got to coming to with black and blue marks all over me, black eyes, cuts and bruises, tongue about that thick, all full of holes. They call that an alcoholic convulsion. And I had to run out of convulsions before I could come to this program. Totally, completely. So my AA experience has been a little bit different than many. I did all my fighting before I got here. And I'll tell you a little about my last go-round. Many of you have heard it, but you're going to hear it again or go home. And you better not. My last escapade started Friday before Christmas, 1945. My boss man called me in, and he says, Charlie, I was Charlie in business. He says, Charlie, you've had a lot of trouble this year. He did not mention drinking. But he knew that I knew what he meant when he said trouble. And then he said to me, I think I know your problem. I think it's because of the pressure you're under. Now, says he, I'm going to take some of the pressure off of you. And maybe next year you won't have so much pressure and you won't have so much trouble. And instead of shooting me, as he had every right to do, he gave me $3,000 for a Christmas present to take the pressure off of me. The Friday before Christmas, 1945. And if you don't think he took the pressure off of me, you're nuts. There's one thing that's much worse for an alcoholic than bad fortune, and that's good fortune. I got drunk on the way home. Now, that was not par for the course for me because I was periodic. Periodics don't get drunk on the way home. Periodics taper on. They never taper off. Ordinarily, it would take me from 30 to 60 days to get off my feet after I'd taken the first slug after a dry spell. So this was entirely different. I got drunk on the way home. I remember nothing from the Friday before Christmas, 45, till the middle or after the middle of January 1946. And another thing happened that can't happen. I never eat when I drink. And I had nothing in my skin but whiskey. And yet I came to, sometime after the middle of January 1946, with the clearest head I've ever known in my lifetime. This is strange that it happened to me. And I saw me for the first time in my life with nothing between me and me. Everything had burned out. All the excuses were gone. I wanted nothing for myself at all. Nothing. I accepted the fact that I'd lost the battle of life. I did not know why, because I knew nothing of alcoholism. But I knew I'd lost the battle of life, and I accepted it. I knew that my family was divorcing me, and I knew they should have done it 7 years before, 10 years before. And I accepted that. I knew why the kids wouldn't come home when I was around. I accepted that. And I knew why this same boss had sent word to the house that if I ever stepped foot in the plant again, he was going to throw me through the window. And the window which he had picked out don't open. It's plate glass. I accepted the fact that morning that everything dear to me in life was gone and should be gone, and that I was not entitled to have it back. Now I'm going to say that again, because this is what my life has been built on for 33 years and 6 months. Because it hasn't been necessary for me to take a drink or a pill for 33 years and 6 months, by the grace of God, the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous and people like you. It suddenly became very necessary that I be sober till I died, because I didn't want to die with a record. Now, many of you people have lived with people like me, and you have known that we didn't love you. Mrs. C told me no less than 500 times, Chuck, if you loved us, you wouldn't do these things. And I couldn't tell her it was because I loved them that I did. But it's the truth. You see, as a periodic, I would look at what I was doing to my family between drunks when I was physically sober. And I knew I was crucifying them. And I wanted to take them in my arms and say, look, I love you. I'll never do this again. I love you. But I couldn't. I'd already done it. And I knew I was going to do it again, because I didn't know how not to do it again. And I'd get to hurting so bad right here, I'd have to go out and replenish the supply and get drunk all over again to get rid of the big hurt. You can't explain anything like that. During that whole bad period, my bed was only that far from hers. And it might as well have been in Siberia. Many's the time during a dry spell when I'd lie there until I could tell by her breathing that she was asleep. And I'd cry that pillow of mine full of tears. Just wringing wet, that pillow. because, you see, I knew what I was doing, and I couldn't help it. So it became very necessary for me to be sober today. Because I loved my family. There was never a time I didn't love them, and I loved them that morning. And I remembered in the depths of my despair that Mrs. C. had found Jack Alexander's article in the Post in March 1941, and she had read it. And she thought it might be of some value to me. Now, this was 4.5 years before the time I'm talking about, the morning I'm talking about. And that morning I remembered that she'd put it on the left arm of the chair that I sit in right now, open to right page, hoping that I'd read it, you see. And I remembered that I'd read it. I remembered only 2 things about it because I was drunk when I read it. I remembered that drunks helped drunks and didn't drink, and they called it Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said to myself, if I ever live to get out of this bed, I'll find AA. And immediately the curtain dropped. My little period of sanity was gone. I was sickened to death, drunk, and insane. And I had a lot of dying to do. But from the moment of commitment until right now, I've never had a drink of liquor or a sedating or tranquilizing pill of any kind. Such is the great significance of this thing called surrender. Surrender. Surrender is victory for the alcoholic. This is one we win by giving up the fight. Amazing as it might seem. Now, I can tell you, without fear of successful contradiction, that the greatest single event that has ever happened in my life, and I'm coming up for 77, August the 3rd, if I live that long, 77 years old. And the greatest single event that's ever happened in my life happened sometime between the Friday before Christmas, 45, and the middle of January, 46. I died to self, which is surrender. And the only thing I had to do with it, I drank the whiskey. I drank the whiskey. Now, if Mrs. C. had elaborated, she'd have told me that while I was lying there, drinking the clock around, for perhaps 5 weeks, that I emptied 7 quarts of whiskey every 3 days. Now, she says that. I didn't say it. I can't contradict her because I wasn't there. Furthermore, I don't think 7 quarts is too much for 3 days. If you only do it 3 days. But if you do it for 5 weeks, it's either too much or just enough. And in my case, it was just enough. Because I died to self, which is surrender. Now, when I finally got able to talk, I became interested in finding Alcoholics Anonymous. And knowing that it wasn't in the phone book, I never looked. Because, you see, they don't anonymous in the phone book. And you were anonymous, weren't you? So my keen alcoholic mind told me you wouldn't be in the phone book. So I had to call people and ask them if they knew anybody that knew anybody in AA. And some doctor in Beverly Hills gave me a man's name and number, telephone number, and I called him up. We talked a little bit. He was a picture man. And And he finally said to me, have you had a drink today? And I said, no. Well, he said, don't take one. He says, I'm working nights right now, and I can't take you to meetings tonight, but maybe tomorrow I won't be working, so call me tomorrow. And if I'm not working, I'll take you to meeting tomorrow night. So I called him tomorrow, and we talked a little while. He said, have you had a drink today? And I said, no. But he says, don't take one. I'm still working. Call me tomorrow. So I called him the third day, and we started talking, and I said, I know, you're still working. And he said, yes. I said, you don't have to take me to meeting. Where's there a meeting that I can go to? And he told me. That wasn't too far from my house. So I determined to go to that meeting, and it was a Sunday. And this meeting was Sunday night. And so I was all right up until maybe a half an hour, three-quarters of an hour before I should go to the meeting. And then I got nervous. I got to thinking that maybe I shouldn't be seen with people like you. It might not be well for my reputation. Now, you have no idea how insane that was. Because I'd spent more time in the Beverly Hills jail in the last 10 years than the jailer. And here I was getting scared about you being bad for my reputation. But I decided to go anyway, but I disguised myself a little. And when the time come, I sallied forth. By myself alone. I like to say by myself alone. Because often I'm by myself now, but I'm never alone. But that night I was by myself alone. And I went to the meeting, and it was on the ground floor of a building at the corner of Wilshire and Santa Monica in Beverly Hills. Veterans of Foreign Wars Hall. And I got there maybe 10 minutes before the meeting was supposed to take up, and I stood in the door looking at maybe 40 people, not more. Because, mind you, this was prior to 33 years and a half ago. And again, my keen alcoholic mind started to work. Because you didn't look like me. And you weren't dressed like me. And you sure as hell weren't talking like me, because every one of you is talking, nobody listening. And it was all happy talk. So I knew you weren't alcoholics. I figured, well, they've given me the wrong information. This is the night that the veterans meet here with their wives, and they're going to have a party. And I'm going to have to leave and come back the night the drunks are here. And I turned to leave, and I was as near dead as I'll ever be when I turned to leave. At long last I'd come, and it was the wrong night. And the next couple of minutes is the reason I'm here tonight. Somebody in the middle of that room had been watching me. And when I started to leave, he came trotting over at the door, and he yelled to me. He says, "Mister, were you looking for somebody?" And I said, "No, sir." Well, he says, "What were you looking for then?" And thinking he was a veteran, I said, "Well, if it would interest you, sir, I was looking for sobriety." Everything about that man changed just like that. It was just like you'd turned on a switch. He lit up like a Christmas tree. And it was obvious to me that he was glad I was there. Now, some of you in this room will know what it means when I say he was glad I was there, because my own flesh and blood wouldn't spit on me. Here's a total stranger that was so glad I was there, he lit up like a Christmas tree. And between us girls, I was no bargain. I just come off 4 or 5 weeks blackout. But to him, I was a bargain. And I was hooked before he ever opened his mouth again. And when he did, this is what he said. Why, take off your hat and coat. You're in the right place. And he took me and rocked me to sleep. This is AA. Without this, no recoveries at all. None. We're allowed to get sober by the spirit of Alcoholics Anonymous. We maintain sobriety by the practice of the principles. The spirit that made that guy get up and come trotting over to the door when I started to leave. The spirit that made some of you people get up last night at 2 o'clock and go across town to sit with somebody that was in trouble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share. Sharing, caring, and sharing is Alcoholics Anonymous. And this is the spirit of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's spelled L-O-V-E, love. And they say God is love. And I believe it. It's because of that love that I'm standing right here tonight. If that man hadn't gotten up and come trotting over to the door, there's no way that anybody could guess what would have happened to me. But he did. And that's why I'm here. The only reason I'm here. Did it ever occur to you how fortunate we are that we love each other? How very fortunate we are that we love each other. A wet drunk is not easy to love. It just about takes one to love one, doesn't it? For instance, if one of us is lying in the gutter, and I say this with totally without rancor or judgment, because I told you I couldn't even explain to myself my own actions and reactions during that last dozen years I drank. So I don't expect a non-alcoholic world to understand this when we don't even understand ourselves. But if a non-alcoholic sees us in the gutter, he gives us a wide berth. He thinks we're there because we have no willpower, no backbone. He thinks that if we had any willpower or backbone, we wouldn't be there. Some of them perhaps think we like it there, you know. But when you and I see one of our people in the gutter, we know why he's there. We know that he hates that gutter worse than anybody else in the world could hate it, because he's been there before. He hates it. And he's there because he has to be. And you and I know that. So we can go get him. Put him on our laps and rock him to sleep. How fortunate we are that we love each other. This is Alcoholics Anonymous. And in my way of thinking, without it, no recovery at all. Now, you told me a few things that night that are as vivid in my mind tonight as the last meeting I went to, which was the night before I came over here. More vivid, as a matter of fact. The first thing you told me inside that hall, if you're an alcoholic, one drinks too many and 1,000 aren't enough. It's the first drink that's killing you. Now, I've been drinking for 25 years. And nobody had ever said to me, it's the first drink that's killing you. And I, being a periodic, would never have guessed it in a lifetime. I thought it was the last gallon. I was trying for a dozen years to knock it off before the trouble started, you know. And I reasoned very, very logically. I would say to myself, you got in a slammer on Wednesday. If you'd have knocked it off Tuesday, you wouldn't have gotten in the slammer Wednesday, obviously. So I decided to knock it off Tuesday the next time. But I wouldn't specify which Tuesday. And there I was again, you see. And the very first night, she says, first drink. The first drink that's killing you. Don't take that next drink. And the next thing you told me was, today's the day we don't drink. And oh, what a thing this is. What a thing this is. And mind you, this is my first meeting. If you would have told me you've got to stay sober for 33 years, I'd have dropped dead. If you'd have told me I had to stay sober 33 days, I'd have dropped dead. But you didn't. You said, today's the day we don't drink. Now, if a day's too long, how about an hour? Don't drink for an hour. And then do it over again. But said you, the first night, regardless of how long you live in Alcoholics Anonymous, never expand that time more than 24 hours. And I bought that one, right along with the one drink deal. I bought it, and I've still got it. Second greatest lesson I've ever learned in my entire lifetime. This is my day. I have no past. I want no future. The next thing you told me was stay close to us. You said to me, there's more wisdom in this room tonight about your problem and its answer than in any other room on the face of the earth, except another room just like this, where Alcoholics Anonymous members are meeting. Get into as many meetings as you can, you said. Stay close to us. And I bought that one, and I've still got it. I've attended nearer 5 than 4 meetings a week for 33 years and a half. And I've never gone to one too many. And you might say to me, how do you know? I got the simplest yardstick in the world. I never had it so good. This is the only easy life I've ever known, the only good life that's ever been mine in my entire lifetime. And I'm not about to change a winning formula. Just a little sidelight on that. A gentleman that came in with me a number of years back said to me, Chuck, he says, I've quit falling on wet drunks. He says, I've had my turn at that. I've done my part. It's time to step down now and let the new people do it. So I'm not calling on wet drunks anymore. And he says, besides, I'm tired of getting puked on. And I said, how about you? And I said, well, I'm not tired of wet drunks yet. I sort of like to call on wet drunks because they remind me so much of myself. So I'll just probably keep it up until you pat me in the face with a scoop. And I said, besides, I'd a hell of a lot rather be the pukee than the pukeor. And I remembered very well many times when I was both. So, I still do a lot of that, too. And the next thing you told me was, why I can't drink like other people. It has to be told, you know. So you told me. You said alcoholism is a disease of a twofold nature, a knowledge of the body coupled with an obsession of the mind. A knowledge of the body coupled with an obsession of the mind. The knowledge of the body meaning simply this: for some reason unknown to anybody, my body cannot successfully handle alcohol. I cannot live and drink. So, they told me that night that there was nothing in the world to be done about the allergy of the body. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. So the only thing we can do about the allergy of the body is to accept the fact that that's the way it is with us, and lay it down and turn to the other half of the disease, the obsessions of the mind that cause us to drink in the first place. And that's what our program is all about. To give us a way to rid ourselves of the obsessions of the mind that cause us to drink against our will. And you told me that that's what our program is all about. To show us a way to do that. Here are the steps we took, you said to me. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. Now, I knew that the people I was talking to were drunks. I knew it. Because in those days, 5 years was as long as anybody had been sober in California. The program is just 5 years and a half maybe, old in California at that time. So people hadn't gotten rid of their markings. They still had headlights here, you know, and a few bags under the bags. Their wiring was still sort of exposed. So I knew they were drunks. And I also knew they weren't drunk because I saw their eyes. And I listened to what they said. And I liked what I heard. And I was back in the meeting every night for 6 months. Every night for 6 months I was in the meeting. Not because I had any hopes of the program ever doing anything for me, because I was going to die. Nobody could live in my condition. But I was back there for 2 reasons. It was comfortable in a meeting, and I didn't have any place else to go. That helps a hell of a lot. So, I'm in a meeting every night for 6 months, and I discover that I haven't had a drink or a pill for 6 months. That was the first great discovery. Not a drink or a pill for 6 months. And I was so tickled about that I got all wrapped up in trying to give this thing away. And another 6 months went by. And I discovered I had a family. Now I've got to make a little aside on this. Many of you have heard it. But it'll always be big in my life. I had a little old girl that went with me to meetings in Beverly Hills. She was probably 25 years my senior. She was a little bitty thing, very wealthy. She walked like she was walking on eggs. She always dressed up. I've never seen her in an AA meeting without a hat on. I think she's the only person I ever saw in an AA meeting with one on. And Louise was very, very wealthy. She lived up above the tracks. And She had a lot of money. I lived between Wilshire and Olympic, down on the flatlands where the poor people live. But she didn't mind that. I'd call her up and say, Louise, how about a meeting? She'd say, come and get me. And I'd go get her and we'd go to a meeting. And sometime between the first 6 months and the first year, she called my house thinking to get me. And she got Miss C on the line. And she says, who in the hell are you? She was drunk and she had the voice to prove it. Little thing, but she had quite a husky voice. Who in the hell are you? She said. Miss C says, well, I'm Chuck's wife. Didn't know he had a wife. And Miss C says, well, he doesn't either. But after a year, I discovered I had a family, and they were living like kittens. And lest I forget it, the 24th day of June, we celebrated 54 years. 54 years in double harness. So another 6 months went by, and I discovered I was still down at the office, cleaning up my desk. And business was good. Business was plumb good. And that wasn't a bad discovery. And another year went by, and I discovered that my own state of being was better than anything I'd ever known in my lifetime. It was just good to be alive. And now 6 years have gone by. And I discovered that I was never alone anymore. I who had walked alone for a lifetime. I was never alone anymore. I had a God of my very own. Wherever I am, He is. And this is the great discovery. When we make this discovery, the search is over, and life begins. And it's an inside job. Every bit of it's an inside job, according to me. And I can only tell you what happened to me. And I'm telling you what happened in my life. And that's the reason I believe it. It happened in my life. So, I think Alcoholics Anonymous is nothing in the world but uncovering, discovering, and discarding. This is the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. We uncover and discover the thing we've been looking for all of our lives. And then we discard all the junk that we were conditioned to believe was important prior to this time. Uncover, discover, and discard is Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's a fantastic thing. And it goes on forever. It goes on forever. When you and I eventually take the third step, we enter a state that is a totally new dimension in our lives. A totally new dimension in our lives. An infinite Father, an infinite child, and an infinite journey. An infinite journey. No destination at all. There'll always be as much ahead of us as there is right now. 10,000 times 10,000 years from now, there'll still be as much ahead of us as there is right now. Because, you see, we're looking at infinity. Infinity. If there's one thing that is so totally embedded in me that there is no doubt whatsoever, it is that the first two words in the Lord's Prayer mean exactly what they say. And living with people like you for 33 years and watching what happens in your life and mine is the reason that I'm talking this way. I'm totally convinced that those first two words mean what they say. Our Father God. You remember when they said the carpenter master teaches pray? He said, after this manner pray ye, our Father God, our Father. His Father, your Father, and mine. Now, if that be true, and everything in me proclaims that it's true, and everything that's happened to me proclaims that it's true, you can let your imagination go crazy, and you can't even get close to the truth of being itself. What would it be like if those two words meant what they said? Fantastic. There are no words for it. If you and I could see what we belong to, it would blind us. It's that big. And I think that we're inclined to sell ourselves short. To sell ourselves short. I have been the brunt of many, many stories and jokes, all that stuff, because I'm known pretty well around the world as a water walker. I just want to correct that here between you and me. I can't even swim. Furthermore, I don't know where the rocks are. But I can say to you that I have never, in 33 years of lots of meetings at Alcoholics Anonymous, I have never heard any speaker yet lay it on the line like that book does. Never. That book tells me way back in chapter 3, we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. Now, why would that be clear back in chapter 3? The 5th chapter is how it works. And here we are, the first line in the 2nd paragraph, right up in the front part of chapter 3. Why? Because if we be alcoholic, we're caught in a trap we can't spring. We have to have help. And we can't get help until we recognize the need for it. God Himself can't help us until we will allow it. So there you are. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost self, which is not only the admission, but the acceptance of the fact that I'm an alcoholic. I can't live and drink, and I myself can't keep from drinking. Then you go over a little further, and you find in chapter 5, but this is before step 1 in the 12 steps. It says if you have decided you want what we have, and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. And that means to me that unless and or until sobriety comes first, we can't have it. And unless it remains first, we can't keep it. And I believe this with everything in me. Because, you see, no man or no woman alcoholic can walk up to step 1 and take it cold. Something's got to happen before anybody's going to take step 1. If I could have survived without taking step one, I'd never take it. Because step one is a twofold admission of defeat. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, physical, that our lives had become unmanageable, mental. We've lost the battle twice over in the first step. Now, nobody's going to take that if we can help it. We're not people that run around surrendering on every other street corner. We were born to win, and we damn near did. I call us the almost people. Almost was I President of the United States, but I got just a little bit alcoholic. And that's all, brother. As bad as step one is, step two is twice as tough. Because step two reads like this. It says, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I submit to you that there's an implication here. Sane people don't need to be restored to sanity. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So that means we're nuts. Number one, we've lost the battle of life twice over. Number two, we're nuts. And number three is worse than both of them. There's only one thing in life that'll be tougher on you and me to do than step three, and that's step five. They're a couple of dandies. Step three says we made a decision to turn the world and our lives over to the care of God, as we understood it. In other words, we got to get out of the driver's seat. We got to move over it. We got to turn over the keys. Now, we're not people that give up the keys. When I was a drinking man, the only way you could get my keys was to wait till I passed out. I wouldn't have given my keys to God. I could come out of the pub at 3 o'clock in the morning with my wife or yours. She'd say, honey, give me the keys, I'll drive. And you'd say, whose car? Whose car are you going to drive? This is my car. If you're going with me, get in. You might be there at daylight, but you still got the keys. You ain't going no place, but you still got the keys. Step three says you got to give up the keys. Fantastic. Those three steps are, of course, decisions. Then you move into a couple of action steps, 4 and 5. Then you got a couple of decision steps, and then 2 more action steps. Due to the lateness of the hour, that's all we're going to say about those, except that when we finally, honestly have applied the first 9 steps to ourselves for sobriety only, if we weren't surrendered when we got here, we are surrendered. If we've honestly taken the first 9 steps. That's what they're for. To squeeze us out of ourselves, to get rid of that ego, which has ridden us like a Texas cowboy rides a pony for a lifetime. It has made us do whatever it wanted to. Obsessions of the mind are much more powerful than the willpower, you know. When the willpower and the imagination of the emotions are in conflict, the willpower always loses. It never wins. So we got to get rid of the daddy of all the obsessions of the mind, which is the human ego, which is a false position in the first place. It is duality. I'm totally convinced that duality is our problem and unity is the answer. I walked alone for 43 years, searching every place I could look for answers to life. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, failure in every department of life, husband, father, businessman, man, and drunk. And I wasn't looking for an answer for anything. All I wanted was to be able to live today without drinking, so I could use today to rub out as much of the record as I could before I died. That's all I wanted. Nothing else. And it's amazing. It's amazing what's happened in my life. My life for 33 years has been one 12-step call. That's all. Nothing else. In home, in business, in play, in AA, in church. It's been one 12-step call. My first 6 years in the program, I called it rubbing out a record, just helping God's kids do things they need to have done because I wanted to. Rubbing out the record. But after I discovered I was never alone anymore, I had a guide of my very own. Wherever I am, he is. From then until now, I've called it going about my Father's business. And that's my business. And it's his business to take care of me. And he's done an infinitely better job of it than I ever did. I told you that our family was put back together. My health was put back together, and I never went to a doctor. I fell on my face for 3.5 years after my last drunk. Never even went to a doctor. Maybe if I'd have gone to a doctor, he'd have got me on my feet good in 6 months, or maybe 6 weeks, I don't know. But I never went to a doctor. But I just wore it out, and I don't fall on my face anymore. So that's pretty good health. In my 11th year of sobriety, I bought the business that they were throwing me out of, which is absolutely impossible. I could stand here all night and tell you that little story, and it's fantastic. But I bought that business, and when I sold it a little while back, I was a rich man. I've done nothing in the last 33 years trying to get rich. Nothing. I just helped people do things they need to have done because I wanted to. They kept me busy and made me a rich man. So, if every authority on earth said this was a getting life, I'd laugh out loud. In my opinion, it has never been a getting life. It has forever been a giving life. And the more you pour out without a price tag on it, the more you have. Now, there's only one way that anybody will ever know that the 12 steps work, is to work them. That's the only way anybody will ever know that they work. There isn't anybody in this room, I don't think, that ever saw me drunk, but my wife. And she won't tell. Otherwise, you don't know whether I'm a drunk or not. I might not be a drunk at all. I might have joined this society just because I'm queer for donuts and coffee. So the only way anybody will ever know that the program works is to work it. And the only way that anybody will ever know that God is sufficient unto all of our needs is to act like it and prove it. To act as if it were true and prove that it is. There's a line in the other book, the one with the gold letters on it, that says, act as though I am and I will be, saith the Lord. So we act like we're his kids, And we prove that we are. And we prove that a lot of the little things that we've known intellectually forever, like fear not, little flock, it's the Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. We discover that that's true. Take no thought of tomorrow, what you eat, what you drink, whether all you should be clothed. The Heavenly Father knows what you have need of before you ask Him. We discover that that's true. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow, they toil not, neither do they spin. And I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. We discover that that's true. We discover that St. Francis knew what he was talking about when he said, for it's better to love than to be loved. It's better to understand than to be understood. For it is in giving that we receive, in forgiving that we're forgiven, and in dying that we awake to eternal life. Now, I have for years changed everything that I didn't like. I changed the Lord's Prayer. There's a line in that I can't take. So I changed it. It says there someplace, lead us not into temptation. And when I was that high, I knew that God couldn't lead me into temptation. I knew better than that forever, but that's what was there, and so I had to find something else. And I did. And it's this, if you read the translation from Aramaic, which was the tongue of Jesus, if you read the direct translation, this is what that line says. Thou leadest us not into temptation, but delivereth us from evil. Now, I can go right down the road with that. But I can't go afoot with a God that would lead me into temptation. So I changed it. I like it my way. I changed St. Francis's prayer. It says, in dying that we awaken to eternal life. And I said to myself, I don't want to wait till I die to awake to eternal life. So what did he mean? And it was very easy for me to come up with the fact that he meant dying to self or surrender. Now I said, that's what he meant. So I said, dying to self. And then I said, wait a minute. If you take all the Irish Catholics and Southerners out of Alcoholics Anonymous, they could hold an international convention in a telephone booth. Now I said, I got to get some authority for this. And I called up Manresa, which is a Jesuit retreat house out in our country. And I got old Father Toner on the line. I know the fathers out there pretty good. And I got Father Toner on the line. I says, Father, listen to what I did to St. Francis's prayer. For it is in dying to self that we awaken to eternal life. And you know what that monkey said to me? He says, what the hell do you think he meant? Just like he had known it all his life. And he had never thought of it till I told him. So, who else thinks as I do? I'll tell you just a couple little things and quit. Those of you who have read A Comes of Age will remember a Jesuit priest whose picture's in there and a little bit about him. I happen to know Father Ed Dowling very well. Spent a lot of time with him. And I loved him very much, and I think he loved me real good. And one day we were talking, and he says, Chuck, he says, your cross was alcoholism. He says, my cross was lack of faith. He says, I went to school for 18 years and was ordained a Jesuit priest, and I didn't believe nothing. And then he said something that I wasn't able to repeat without crying up until the last few years. And Father had died in 1960. He says, I came to believe watching what happens to you people in Alcoholics Anonymous. Now this from a Jebby priest. I came to believe watching what happens to you people in Alcoholics Anonymous. Isn't that beautiful? I think we have the greatest screen of life that anybody will ever look at if we just read the lesson that's before us. I came to believe watching what happens to you people in Alcoholics Anonymous. Can't help it. For a guy like me to come out from under a rock to the life I've had for 33 years, it's absolutely impossible. But for the grace of God and the truth of life itself. God, my Father, I, his kid. Now I'm going to give you one more guy. And this chappie is a saint in the Catholic Church. I already told you I'm not Catholic. But he's a saint. If you're an Irishman, he was St. Augustine. If you're like me, he was St. Augustine. And I guess the reason I like him so good was that he reminded me so much of me. He had a great weakness for strong drink. Yeah. He drank a lot of that flit. Got in a lot of trouble. And he had a strong weakness for the ladies. And he got in a lot of trouble with them. And I seem to identify in both instances. And you know, his mother prayed for him for 40 years. And every time he'd go by her, he'd pat her on the head and say, keep praying. Some of these days it might take. And someday it did. And here's the way he talked about it in the later years of his life. And he was talking to God. And here's what he said. He says, too late have I loved thee, O thou beauty of ancient days, yet ever knew. Too late have I loved thee, and behold, thou wert within, and I abroad, and there I searched for thee, deformed I, plunging amidst the fair forms which thou hast made. Thou wert with me, but I was not with thee. God, that just blows my gourd. Isn't that beautiful? That's what we're talking about. You see, if one of us is God's kid, we all are. If one of us ain't, none of us are. And I am, so you is. So don't worry about it. And nothing bad can happen to you in the ultimate, because you can't change the reality of your own being. You can only change your experience in reality. Hell is very real as an experience. I spent many years in it. Sickness is very real as an experience, but it is not reality. I spent a great deal of time in that. Hate is very real as an experience, but it is not reality. Nothing bad can happen to you in the ultimate because of your divine birthright. God, my Father, I, his kid. So quit worrying about what might happen and get lost in this program, doing the things that it tells us, suggests that we might do, and start reaping the joy that comes out of loving each other and sharing one with another in love. Today. And let the chips fall where they may. Now I'm thinking about my last little while in my bad drinking time. I had a son that was as big as I am. And his mother assigned him to me. And if I ever got the car in the garage, nowhere in the world could I get it out until I was sobered up. And oftentimes I would run out of medicine in the middle of the night. And I got no wheels. And that's bad. And so I got the keen alcoholic mind working again. So I commandeer one of the boys' bikes. Here I go. Hunting a bottle, you know. 2 o'clock in the morning. You'd be surprised how often I found one, you know. But the thing that tickles me is I got that big window. Mr. Steve mentioned it. And I love to sit and look out that window. And many things happen to me while I'm looking out the window, because once in a while I can't see out the window because there's nothing in front of me but your faces. They black out the window. You can't see nothing but your faces. And I sit there and bawl, you know, because I love you so much. I love you so much. And you don't have to change anything for me to love you, because I know who you are, whether you do or not. I love you. And other times I look out there and I see me on that bicycle. There I go down Elm Drive on that bicycle. And I see God riding right along with me. And he's saying to himself, look at this silly bastard. Hunting all over Beverly Hills for me, and I've been with him all the time. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First, I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.